Good afternoon, and welcome to Evangel University's Opera Workshop's presentation of The Italian Girl in Algiers. My name is Bob Berg, and I'm not here because I taught here for quite a few years. I've never been to Algiers, and I'm certainly not an expert in Italian girls. My wife, Jane Munzenberg, is the stage director of the production, and so somehow she always gets me involved in some way or another. When she did opera productions here years ago, it was having me help put sets together with a glue gun. I like this role a little bit better than that one. So, welcome. How many of you have never been to an opera before? Hands. Okay, that's a good number of you. You probably don't know what to expect exactly. You may expect something really, really serious and maybe not even exactly pleasant, but you're here because you know somebody. But believe me, you are going to have a lot of fun. Not just because it's opera, it's comic opera, so it's intended to be funny. And I saw this show on Friday night. You will love this show. You'll have a lot of fun. Opera it's short basically from the Italian. Opera musica, literally musical works. So the word opera literally has come from the Italian meaning works. And opera is a form of musical presentation or production that is something, the closest thing that we think of. How many of you have ever been to a musical or have seen a musical? So it's similar to a musical, and we'll talk about maybe how it's a little bit different. But it developed in 16th century Italy. And just a little bit of a background here, for centuries, Europe had been church-centered, and if you will, in a sense, God-centered. Life was centered around the church. Art and music was tied to the church and was expected to reflect godly sorts of things, religious sorts of things. But what happens a little bit prior to opera developing was something called the Renaissance, which you've probably heard about. The Renaissance, a rebirth of Greco-Roman, right, going back to what we call the classical period. And the arts and the literature and the philosophy was reborn, in a sense. And so one of the key differences that develops here is a movement from God-centered, church-centered, to something other than that. And sometimes you'll hear the word humanism. And for some of us, humanism is a negative word, has a negative connotation. The humanism we're talking about here is not necessarily anti-God, though. It's not that they're anti-church. As a matter of fact, that many of the great Renaissance artists were indeed Christians and did their work in the context of the church. It's just that the focus now is more on humanity as the great creation of God, and who in turn reflect the creation of God by their own creativity. So, opera then, at the time, was the great entertainment, the entertainment of the time. I want you to picture then, if you can picture going back before Netflix, before cell phones, before television, before radio. That's probably impossible, yes, for many of you. But we're going back to a time when the only time that you would see a production or hear a musical production was at the production. You walk around with your favorite music and you have it 24/7. But this would have been a major event, sort of like the circus was when I was growing up, about this is what you'd go to, and it was a really big event. So if you think in terms of what is involved with opera, if you think of a musical, it's sort of like a play, and all the things involved in a play, you have to learn lines, you have to learn the people's other lines, you have to learn where to go, you have to have a set direction, you have to not trip over things and run into people. But then you have to add music, right? You're singing and you're following a conductor. Opera adds to that. What you're singing is extremely difficult. It's taxing, it's not easy, it is unmiked, right? So you see what I have here tonight? I'm the only person you will see with one of these. The students who are singing here this afternoon don't have this. And this is the development of the voice that allows them to sing, and it's projected in an area of this size. You'll find stock characters in opera, just as you will in a play. You have the young lovers, for example. You have the villain. In opera, it's interesting, though, that the heroes are often a high voice. Often the lead woman is a soprano, the lead hero male is a tenor, and often the bad guy is a baritone. Any bass baritones out there, you are generally the villains in an opera, or at least the antagonist. In a comic opera, again, they're the villain, but you get to laugh along with the villain. And opera also, at this particular, also likes to poke fun, right? To turn tables. That's what comedy does, right? So you'll see the fellow who is sort of the villain, the bad guy, the lower voice, is Mustafa, a chieftain, a powerful figure that everybody is bowing down to, and he thinks that he's in control. But you realize that by the end of the story, he's not in control at all. It's basically this Italian girl who really is in charge of things. So the opera tonight we're seeing is done by a fellow named Gioacchino Rossini. You may or may not know that name. He's important because he's one of the high points of Italian opera at the time. He wrote his first opera when he was 18 years old, and in the next 19 years, he wrote 39 operas. He was cranking them out at 2 a year. And then, at 37 years old, he stopped. And he lived another 39 years. He lived half of his life and didn't write another opera. And musicologists are fascinated by why. Maybe he was just bored or had enough money or whatever. But he just stopped writing, and one wonders what it would have been like if he had continued to write. His operas are commonly performed today, most well-known being comic opera, like we'll see this afternoon, in which there are barely plausible plots. Forget trying to follow the plot. Plots are excuses for people to sing beautifully. Lots of silly things happen. Things turn out all right in the end. In one of his operas, a count dresses up as a nun to get to a woman he wants. She is in a castle full of women awaiting the return of their husbands from the Crusades. It's sort of Monty Python does Shakespeare. It's kind of the sense that you get. So what we're going to hear today is an example of what we call bel canto. Bel canto literally means beautiful singing, and it can mean a couple of different things. It can mean the standard way of teaching, even singing today. If you take, for example, private voice here at Evangel or at a university, you'll be taught a certain way of singing that emphasizes a beautiful lyrical line that's supported, and again, unmiked. You're not going to be using mics as you develop your voice in this way. So this is music that is both pleasing to the senses, but also marvelous in the excellence of its performance. Some of you may just be like sports, and sometimes you'll see an athlete pull a move that is just so marvelous. You might even hear the word, "Now that was beautiful." So it's not just a matter of what they're doing, it's the skill with which they do it. The audience for operas came to the opera to hear the stars demonstrating their amazing voices, usually in solo singing called arias. In bel canto, the other use of the word is as a musical style. And in this particular style, you'll hear this even this evening in an aria. An aria begins with a slow, beautiful lyrical line that transitions into a much faster, louder, and technically demanding second part. And this second part is called floral, or even called vocal fireworks. It involves a flexibility of the voice to move not just this way, but this way, very, very rapidly, up and down. And if you haven't done it before, you'll just have your mouth open. You may have that happen a couple of times this afternoon. His most famous opera, you may have heard of. How many of you have ever heard of The Barber of Seville? Or Figaro, right? So his most famous opera, The Barber of Seville, is based on a play about a barber named Figaro that was also used by Mozart. You may have heard that name before. And when Mozart wrote an opera based on this same play, he called it The Marriage of Figaro. It's also a very, very famous. It's continually performed today. It's one of the more famous operas. So just as a side note here, just as a pause, as you look up here, this is the set, a fairly simple set, and I'll come back to that in a minute. It's the set of a harem. Are you okay? So get ready for this. At Evangel University, we're depicting a harem, which at the time would also be called in Italian a seraglio. The set is in Algiers. We'll talk again about that in a minute. But they're playing chess. So what would women do at a harem? No doubt they're playing chess. And also, as a kind of inside joke, if you look carefully, one of them is reading a book with the title Barber of Seville. Many Americans have grown up with the distinctive sound of Rossini and not even realized it. Exhibit A. Let me give you an example. He wrote an opera with an overture that you might recognize. The first part of it is this slow, beautiful, lyrical line. And since it's played by a flute, let me try whistling it. Maybe you've heard that or not, right? But it gives you an idea. And that goes on, and then about 2 or 3 minutes into it, all of a sudden, boom, these trumpets come in. And you're actually off to the races. Anybody recognize this? How many of you are old enough to remember what? The Lone Ranger. This was the theme. A whole generation of Americans grew up with the Lone Ranger, and were introduced to Rossini without ever knowing it. But again, it's typical of this. You start out with this slow, beautiful, melodic line, and you just are off to the races. And so what's going to be interesting, this wonderful climax that you'll see this afternoon at the last scene, is done basically, you're doing that speed, but you're singing in an ensemble together. You're spitting out words like a machine gun, and it takes a great deal of skill, not just individually, but as a group to pull it off. Exhibit B, The Rabbit of Seville. I can't imagine the fun they had in creating this. So the opera that we're presenting this afternoon was done a few years before Barber of Seville. It's called The Italian Girl in Algiers, 1813. It's set in Algeria, which is in northern Africa. And even if you're in Italy at the time, this is a far-off, exotic sort of place, even though across the Mediterranean it's not that far from Italy. But it represents something far away and very, very different. If anybody know the Marine Corps line about from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. Well, Tripoli is just down the shore from Algiers, and it's significant because this was written right in the middle of two wars that the United States was involved in, because our ships were getting raided in the Mediterranean, and it was called the Barbary Wars, and this is exactly at that time. So there was this fascination. And for the Italians, it wasn't so much the fighting the war, but it was an entire fashion thing. So here is a painting of a woman. This is an Italian woman dressed up in Turkish garb, a portrait of a woman in Turkish fancy dress. And this was, it's very possible that women who even going to the opera would have dressed up like this. Turkish garb and things were in style. And so there was this fascination of the time of Turkish culture and the desire to sort of play around with Turkish culture. Mozart, again, himself had also, a few years earlier, written an opera called Abduction from the Seraglio. Again, Seraglio is a harem, so we're back to this harem thing. It's interesting, I don't know, maybe if we consulted the men in the room, what is it that's fascinating to men about a castle full of women at your disposal? I don't know. I grew up in a Christian home, so I have no idea what that's all about. But it seemed to be something that was particularly fascinating, this idea of having a harem, and that's the setting here, right, tonight, this afternoon. So, a couple of things about Italian Girl. It is well known for sort of combining what may be called opera seria. You can even see from these words, serious opera, as opposed to opera buffa, which is more comic. There are elements of both in this opera. Let me say real quickly about the plot. I talked about this incredible kind of plot. Let me just lay it out for you very, very quickly. The first scene, there are 3 scenes. We're presenting this afternoon just the first act. There are 3 scenes. The first scene is in a harem, right here, of Mustafa. He is the local, it's called Bey, he's the local authority. Elvira, his wife, is lamenting that he no longer loves her. Mustafa tells his underling, Hali, of his plan to marry off Elvira to his Italian slave. And we should note, if it's not noted, that not only will they sing in English, but there will be super titles that will give you the words. So Mustafa is bored with the women in his harem and wants Ali to find him an Italian woman. He wants specifically an Italian woman. Lindoro enters and sings of his lost love, Isabella. Mustafa informs him of his plans for Lindoro and Elvira. Second scene, a ship is wrecked on the shore, conveniently within an easy walk of Mustafa's Seraglio. And can you make a wild guess as to who walks off this ship and into the opera? Of course, Isabella. Isabella, who is out searching for Lindoro, walks onto stage. And of course, this is Lindoro's lost love and exactly the kind of thing that Mustafa is looking for. With her is a male kind of like sidekick, Taddeo, who himself would like to marry her. They are arrested and pretend that Taddeo is Isabella's uncle. After some bickering, they agree to work together. Third scene. Mustafa convinces Lindoro to take Elvira with him if he provides Lindoro sea passage back to Italy. Mustafa is delighted that an Italian woman has been found and has a reception for her. Lindoro enters, and he and Isabella are shocked to see one another. Isabella shows her mastery over the supposed authority of Mustafa by insisting that Elvira not be sent away. The rest of the scene is classic Rossini as he gradually builds up in the music to a climactic ensemble in which all the characters voice their bewilderment in their distinctive ways. One of them is going, a couple of them are going, ring, ding, ding, ding. One is going boom, 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 boom. One of them is even cawing like a bird because that's what he has him doing. The second act, which you're not seeing this afternoon, as you might guess, ends happily with Isabella orchestrating their escape, her escape with Lindoro, and Mustafa begging Elvira to forgive him and promising never to mess with Italian women again. So, some final thoughts before we get to the production. So I want to, again, to remind you about the difficulty of what these students are doing. This is like, if you've ever been in a musical, you know what's involved in a musical. Add to that the difficulty of the music, and you'll hear how difficult this music is. Major opera productions are very expensive. As you might guess, Evangel does not have the budget of the Metropolitan Opera. So Tracy Pritchard, who is the instructor of the workshop and our conductor today, has definitely assembled the background images that you will see that help us to provide the setting for our presentation. Music instructors have to wear many hats. Let me just say a word about what's called recitatif. Recitatif is a way that opera keeps the story going along. Arias basically are on something in particular. the lover singing about his love. It doesn't move the story along. If you're going to have the story move anywhere, you have to have something a little bit faster. So recitative moves the story along. So just as an example, how many of you have ever been to Messiah, Handel's Messiah? Yes? There are many arias and choruses in there, but there's also recitative because there's a lot of Bible. You ever been to Messiah? There's a lot of Bible. And to tell that story, you've got to have what's called recitative. There were shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. It's sort of singing, but it's somewhere between singing and talking. And it allows, and you'll see them not just individually, but you'll see this in dialogue to move the story along. And you'll note also that if this original opera, we would be using a harpsichord, which really wasn't appropriate for this kind of a room, but the keyboard is changed. You'll even hear the different sound, the sound of a harpsichord, when recitative is being used. And in place of an orchestra, which we'd normally have, the overture, which is played at the beginning, introduces the opera, is being played by a transcription for piano by 4 hands. So, one other word about feel free to applaud. It's somewhere between a classical orchestra performance when you only applaud when? At the end of a movement or something, right? At the end of a performance. And jazz, ever been to a jazz concert? Where you're applauding most of the time, right? When anybody ever does anything. This is somewhere in between. So I'll just encourage you, clap when you feel like clapping. If it seems like it's, no, thank you. So the finale, which I think you will walk off enjoying, is a madcap ensemble. And so you'll see the words. There's a scene at the end, you have this whole line of the ensemble swaying back and forth, singing that they feel like they're being moved in the ocean, like they're about to drown. And I want you to notice how difficult this music is, how they are able to pull it off. And the words, the English translation, it says, everything is happening so suddenly and unexpectedly, right? They're all shocked, they're all trying to figure out, they're all bewildered, not knowing what to do, suddenly and unexpectedly. The Italian words, actually, the actual Italian words that it's translated from are literally confusi e stupidi. So, what are those words? Oh, you can figure that out. What's confusi? They are confused and, okay, well, probably not stupid, but stupefied. That's the idea. They're confused and stupefied. And I'm thinking that when we're done this afternoon, that you will be stupefied by the ability of our evangel students. So again, welcome, enjoy Italian Girl in Algiers.
cackling cockatoo. I've had enough of you, go away. I've had enough of you, I've had enough of you. What a lovely disposition. What a lovely disposition. What a lovely disposition. What a lovely disposition. What a silly exhibition. What a silly exhibition. What a silly exhibition. What a silly exhibition. As a butterfly will fly. As a butterfly will fly. Singing fly. Singing fly. So we very young. So we very young. Singing fly. My mercy sings never ceases. And before his manly power. Yes, and before my manly power, women melt and swoon away. Yes, women melt and swoon away. Yes, swoon away. Everyone leave my presence. Ali, you stay here. You know how I am tired of my wife. She bores me to death. That's why I have decided that Lindoro, my slave, shall be her husband. She's not much of a match for a Turk, but for an Italian, such a woman should be all he could wish for. But Muslim law, sir, never will permit such a mix-up. I have no other law except my pleasure. You hear me? Yes, my lord. And what is your desire? Find me a woman, a proud Italian lady. I wish I could find one. I beg you to have patience till the next ship arrives. Today is Monday, and if by Friday my wish is still unheeded, your head will come off. That won't be needed. I ever be allowed to return to my homeland? For 3 months now, I'm languishing away in this terrible country, apart from my beloved.
You hear? Listen, you Italian. I'll give you a wife.
You will? Good heavens, how dreadful! How can I, a humble slave?
Don't worry about that. I have the woman who is all that your heart could desire.
I'm falling from the frying pan into the fire. If a man decides to marry, it's a serious endeavor. He must try to find a woman who will suit him to perfection. He will find her hardly ever. He will find her hardly ever in 100 girls combined. Hardly ever in 100 girls combined. If you limit your selection to a wife of such perfection, you'll find her hardly ever in 100 girls combined. If you limit your selection to a wife of such perfection, you'll find her hardly ever in 100 girls combined. In 100 girls combined. In 100 girls combined.
You want beauty. You want riches, graces, and passion. Be contented. All the virtues you are naming are superbly represented by the one I have in mind. You will find them in the lady I have in mind. You want beauty, you want riches, you want graces, you want passion. You want beauty, you want riches, you want graces, you want passion. All the virtues you are naming are superbly represented in the one I have in mind. In the one I have in mind. In the one I have in mind.
I would like her, for example, modest, tender, and loving.
Of all those virtues she has ample.
And her eyes, I prefer them bright and shiny.
Like two shining stars in heaven.
Complexion,
Flawless,
figure,
gorgeous,
waistline,
slender,
features.
perfect.
There's no shaking your persistence. What on earth am I to do?
Now, my friend, no more resistance. She will capture even you.
I am horribly confounded.
You'll be dazzled and astounded.
I don't know where to begin.
I am sure you will give in, you will give in, you will give in, you will give in, you will give in.
How hopeless a dilemma, how annoying, how confounding.
You will like her.
Let her be the queen of Sheba. She cannot possess my heart. What on earth is your affection? To a wife of such perfection, you will never, she can never have my heart. What on earth is your affection? To a wife of such perfection, she can never have my heart.
She can never keep your heart. No, you will never take my heart. No, take my heart.
are just one more slave.
I am done for.
Come now today, oh.
Merciful heavens, I'm finished.
Don't you know me better than that?
No, yes, but
Tell me, who is this creature?
I am lost.
He is my uncle.
Yes, her uncle. And therefore, I cannot leave her side.
Where do you come from?
We are both from Verona.
So you're Italian? My friends, I am delighted.
May I inquire what so delights you?
There was never a turn quite so delighted. For you are exactly to the taste of the bay. I know that he has decreed that you shall be the jewel, the brightest shining star of his harem.
Isabella, I fear this will end badly.
And why?
I heard them mention that unspeakable word,
Which one?
the harem.
So what?
What about that little dandy, that pup Lindoro? Though I have never seen him, I know everything.
I loved him before I knew you. It's true that many a month has passed since he left on that boat.
And now my gracious lady is determined to travel till she finds him.
And you?
And now I have become her dear uncle, and will have to end my life inside a harem.
And why do you refuse to marry a lady as charming as Elvira?
I told you already, I do not wish to marry.
And what about you? Don't you agree this lad will make a handsome husband and the wife of the bay, now and forever? What else is there to do? Remember, the bay wants you two to get married. He gives the orders, and you know that his orders must be obeyed. That's not very funny.
It's absolutely crazy.
Why not? He is coming.
Good news for you, Italian. There's a ship in the harbor, and it's bound for your homeland and about to sail in an hour. How would you like to be on that ship? Bound for my homeland. Can it really be so? Thank you, your lordship. Take Elvira with you, and I'll release you. What shall I answer? You also shall have money. You'll be a wealthy man. Once I am back in my own country, perhaps later, she may become my wife. Of course, just as you like. In order to be able to get out of this country, I have no other choice. Better get it over with.
So I must really leave you.
You'll be well off with that young Italian.
But how can I desert you when my heart...
Stop it! Stop it! I know all about you and about your heart.
Was there ever a brute quite so obnoxious?
Hail to you, mighty bay.
What news do you bring?
Marvelous news, a beautiful Italian, just the woman you long for.
Go on.
Was stranded during the last storm.
On with it.
We captured the ship and took the lady into the palace.
That's more like it, my boy. Here's what I order. Go and summon the harem. Tell them to gather in the great palace throne room. There I shall greet the Italian lady. Oh. Elvira, you hurry off with your Italian. Be sure that you don't miss the boat. You, my dear Zulma, kindly escort Italian lady is exactly what I want. I'll teach a lesson to all those dandies in the palace how to treat a woman and insist that she obey me.
I present the Italian signora.
Welcome, welcome.
Oh, how lovely she is. Oh, how funny. What a creature. Not a single redeeming feature. Now I know what lies before me, and now I know what I shall do.
She's a most delicious morsel. What a beauty. She enslaves me. She enchants me. I adore her. I adore. But for now, I'll claim my heart. I must become and self-possessed.
I'm a poor unhappy woman, weak and helpless, and unprotected, weak and helpless, unprotected. You alone, my dearest treasure, can console my bleeding heart. You can console my bleeding heart. Yes, you alone, my dearest treasure, can console my bleeding heart.
I'm about to die of pleasure. She has won me from the start.
My fish is caught quite neatly. He swallowed hook and bait.
She's captured me completely. How marvelous a mate. I can hardly wait. She's captured me completely. How marvelous
Now
a
I know
mate.
what lies before me. Lies before me. I shall
adore her,
play.
the charmer, but for now I shall play my role with art. I shall play my role with art. I'll play my part.
day without me. Because I am her uncle, her dear beloved uncle.
My lord, he is a blockhead, but his head it was on the block.
You heard him, my niece, Isabella. Listen, listen, they want to kill me.
He is my uncle.
Crud muffin. All right, let him go free.
Darling, now I can see it. You really care for me.
I am confused, bewildered. Darling, what did you say?
To kill me for such a trifle. Have mercy, for heaven's sake.
That fellow is so frightened, he's speechless with dismay.
To die for such a trifle, what a dreadful day.
That fellow is so
Have
frightened,
mercy, have mercy.
I ask for
What a day.
that fellow is so
Have
frightened.
mercy, have mercy.
I ask for
To die for such a trifle, to die for such a trifle. To die for such a trifle, to die for such a trifle. What a dreadful day, oh what a dreadful day, oh what a dreadful day.
It's he.
Am I dreaming? It is Isabella.
It is Lenoro.
How will it end? Goddess of destiny, please be my friend. Look as if a thunderbolt had struck them suddenly. What has come over them mighty so
Came so unexpectedly, so very suddenly, but how it happened, well, I do not know.
as if a thunderbolt had struck them suddenly. What has come over them mighty so
Came so unexpectedly, so very suddenly, but how it happened, well, I do not know.
as if a thunderbolt had struck them suddenly. What has come over them mighty so
Came so unexpectedly, so very suddenly, but how it happened, well, I do not know.
as if a thunderbolt had struck them suddenly. What has come over them mighty so
Came so unexpectedly, so very suddenly, but how it happened, well, I do not know.
as if a thunderbolt had struck them suddenly.
So unexpectedly, but what has come
As if a thunderbolt had struck them suddenly. What has
So very
was my wife till yesterday.
And now,
Since I know you, my dear, I do no longer want her.